Good evening, everyone. This webinar is being recorded, so the replay will be sent out to everyone who registered. I've had a great track record of sending out the replay within 24 hours, so should all continue to go well, you'll receive it tomorrow. But I would definitely encourage you to stay tuned through the end of this webinar because I really want to answer the specific questions that you guys have live. So let's go ahead and begin with everyone that we have here so far. So I've got to start out with this quick disclaimer as per usual. It's so important for you guys to fact check everything you're hearing nowadays. When all is said and done, I am not your licensor, I am not your attorney, and our local regulations and laws are always subject to change. So please stay up to date with all that you need to know in order to be in compliance. This webinar presentation is not intended to be regulatory, legal, or financial advice. I'm speaking on my own experience as a childcare business owner, and you're definitely, again, encouraged to seek professional guidance from your local official licensing, legal, or financial agencies that practice or govern your own area. And this is not a credit-bearing training or webinar. So let's go over what will be covered. I am a member of so many groups, including members of different childcare communities. I'm in a mastermind group on a local level, an international level. I'm in state groups, and amongst all these different groups, I have access to listen to thousands of childcare provider voices around the world. And while there is a handful of optimism, I can't help but notice the negative thinkers. And to be honest, it reminds me of some of the difficult employees I've had over the years that always have a rebuttal for everything or can't see the bright side of any situation or are constantly making excuses. And times are rough right now. They're rough for everyone, some way more than others. And we all understand that. But it's so important for you to move forward in your business and in your life thinking positively rather than being weighed down by negativity. Something else we'll do is also review some strategic planning, effective communication, some options of programs and services that you can provide, and enrollment building methods. And then we'll leave some time for an open Q&A with whoever is on the call towards the end. Please use the Q&A box to ask your question at any time during this webinar. I don't want you to forget the questions that you might have as I move through the topics. So a few weeks ago, I hosted a webinar with Kangaroo Time, and I really liked this slide that I used. So I'm going to reuse it and share it here as well so we can all start thinking about our childcare businesses and our situations a little bit differently. For the past 2 months, as some of you know, I've been hosting webinars here for you guys where I brought panelists on to speak about ways that they've adapted their childcare services and programs throughout this pandemic. You can see the replay for those webinars from back in early May on childcaresites.com/webinars. If you were not subscribed or weren't a participant, you can go back to my website and see those replays. If they were closed, they talked about the strategies that they were going to use to adapt to best practices when they reopened. Very early on, back in March, when K-12 schools were shut down, I recognized how important it was going to be for me to begin making immediate plans and taking immediate action to survive this crisis. My center is located in New York, and New York State did not mandate childcare programs to close. They left it up to us to close voluntarily if we wanted to. I actually saw a statistic today that said that 65% of licensed programs in New York chose to stay open, which means that 35% actually did choose to close. After careful thought, there are many reasons why I believed closing my center would not be the best option. And yes, I was scared, I was terrified, but my team and I made the choice to continue showing up for our families who needed us. I want to start off this webinar by encouraging you all to recognize how important adaptation might be for our business continuity and the success of your programs. So think about it. As childcare providers, change shouldn't be new for us. Every year, children graduate and we get a brand new set of families. We have children at different age groups, so we differentiate our teaching strategies. New technologies are introduced every so often. So for those of you that might have been in the industry for a while, I can't imagine how many times you might have had to adapt to new licensing requirements. It's a lot. We experience a lot of change in this field. It's not easy work, and I don't believe that now should be any different. I've definitely seen a lot of providers complaining about the different guidance that's out there and expressing frustration about how certain rules don't make sense or won't work with young children, and I get it, but at the end of the day, I feel like we should all want to be able to say we did everything that we could during these tough times to reduce the risk of spreading this disease. We can at the very least try to implement best practice methods to move forward based on science and the facts, right? I love this saying right here. The same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg. It's all about what you are made of, not your circumstances. Unfortunately, there are going to be many programs who do not survive this pandemic. It's sad, but it's the truth. The children that they were providing services for, they're going to need childcare. And what is going to make those families in need choose you or your program? You can't greet them with despair or worry and heighten the anxiety that they probably already have, right? You have to meet them with professionalism. You have to meet them with confidence, and you have to meet them with an outline of the plans that you have. So let's talk about those plans. With the new guidelines, regulations, and recommendations, there are so many things to reconsider about our operations. I'm sure most of you have done this already, but updated health and safety policies and procedures should be the number one thing you plan. And I will include a link to the Kangaroo Time webinar replay that I hosted along with the replay of this webinar that I send you tomorrow, because in that Kangaroo Time webinar, I spent almost an hour reviewing most of my program's new procedures. So that would be great for you to watch if you just need some suggestions on literally how you should protect the health and safety of your kids and staff. And speaking of staffing is also something you're going to want to look at. Do you need as many staff members as you needed before? Should you lay some off? If you do choose to keep everyone on board, but you still want to reduce payroll, does your state offer a shared work or partial unemployment program that they could take advantage of? Of course, many licensing agencies are mandating smaller class sizes. Well, actually, before I get to that, if you guys are not aware, I don't know if it's in all states, but some states do have a partial unemployment program where you can pay your employees for a certain number of hours, and then unemployment will pick up the rest. That is something that you could do if your staff scheduling isn't, if you don't need your staff to have full-time hours right now due to the structure of your program. You can look into if your state has some sort of shared work or partial unemployment type of program. But going back to the class sizes, of course, many licensing agencies are now mandating smaller class sizes. Currently here in New York, we are required to have a group of no more than 10 children in one group. So our group of 10 does not include teachers. And I have heard of other states including teachers in that number. So you do want to make sure that you check with licensing about that, right? Also, what kind of programs will you be offering? These are things that you might consider changing as you develop your plans. Now, who should help you plan? Of course, you want to first refer to licensing. In the beginning, again, in New York, where my program is located, I'll say that I don't think we had much guidance from our licensing. We definitely have over the last couple of weeks, 3 months into the emergency, but you should definitely see if you have kind of been out of the loop since, like, some programs might have been closed this whole time. If you are one of those programs where you're considering reopening for the summer or for the fall, you do not want to skip seeing, of course, what licensing has to say. So do that first before anything, because your licensing and regulations will trump whatever best practice methods that you have heard about. You could also contact your local childcare resource and referral agency. And I know that our local quality rating and improvement system has been great at sending us, and I don't even know if that's their job really, but my quality improvement specialist has been sending just different resources. Like today, she sent out information about how New York State is now offering small grants to childcare programs that are reopening. So don't ignore those emails from your QRIS or your CCR&R, as well as licensing. Also, your staff. Your staff might have some ideas, or friends that work at other programs, or just have been keeping up to date with what's going on, or just have suggestions. You should be talking to them, involving them in your plans. I was on a call yesterday with a local group of childcare providers, and usually that call consists of owners and maybe directors, but somehow a teacher from one of these programs made her way onto the call. I'm not really sure how she found out about it, but she was on the call complaining about her program supervisor, and everyone else was, kind of speechless. And if I was the owner of that program, I would be embarrassed. She was saying things like she's not receiving guidance from her supervisor, and they're not really helpful, and on all these other awful things. And I don't know that program situation, but that's an example of how your staff might feel if you don't update them as often as possible. Since this has started, especially more so in the beginning, back in March and April, I was sending out weekly, very long emails to my staff. And we'll get into communication later, but talk to your staff, have meetings as you make plans for either reopening or continuing to provide services throughout the seasons. Whether you're operating in the summer or the fall, involve your team. And of course, the families. Some of us might have like family workshops or parent meetings or stuff like that. And while they might not be able to be in person, you can consider doing them virtually, or at the very least, surveying your families. Send out surveys to see kind of where their head is at. Propose different procedures and ask them their opinions, or ask them what they think about certain things. And also, you can get the help from childcare business consultants like myself. I do see that someone has their hand raised, and if you could please, if you have a question, definitely put it in the Q&A box. If you're just tuning in, or if you missed the beginning, use the Q&A box to put your questions in, and from there, towards the end, we will get to as many questions as possible. Okay. And then also with planning, unfortunately, we have to think about possible closures. Spend as much time as possible thinking about how you will respond to all the possible scenarios. Since there is currently no vaccine and states have lifted their stay-at-home orders, people are going to gather. We see it already. More children will show up for childcare. And there is a possibility that someone in your program might test positive if they haven't already. What will you do if this happens? Talk it through with your team and be strategic. Try to reduce the potential program-wide spread. In my center, we used to mix children from different classrooms together at the beginning and the end of the day, or for special occasions. We don't do that anymore. And licensing has now come out saying that it's, for us in New York, it's not allowed. So basically everyone stays with their own group all day long. And this procedure eliminates the risk of exposure of people from one group to another. That way, if someone does test positive, we would not necessarily need to close down our whole building, just the classroom where the person was affected. And again, I do want to encourage you guys to check with your local licensing and your local health departments to make sure that if you were to implement this sort of procedure or anything that I mentioned within this webinar, that you would not be out of compliance. Protect your business. I would suggest that you call to ask about every hypothetical scenario that you're concerned about and unsure of as you develop your plans. Once you do develop your plan, the next step would be to communicate. Communicate with your team. As I started to mention earlier, when this all first started, I sat down with my team immediately with all of as much teachers as that were there that day and were not needed to supervise children in the classrooms. We had like an emergency staff meeting. I gave them all the hypotheticals, all of the information I knew at that point back in March. And then from there, we had bi-weekly virtual meetings on Saturdays. So we created a safe space to hear their concerns and to validate their feelings. We outlined our plans as our plans changed over time. We asked them for their feedback and their recommendations. We asked them what would make them feel more comfortable. We provided them with resources like PPE. We didn't leave it up to them to go get it on their own. We gave them different options of masks and face coverings that they could use. We were just very honest and transparent as we could be, even down to the finances. So I encourage that kind of communication with your employees without worrying them. And also your families. You need to communicate with your families. As I mentioned before, you can distribute surveys to find out their concerns and their childcare needs. Maybe if you're in the process of reopening, like if you've been closed this whole time and you're about to open for the summer, or you're about to open for or you're going to open for the fall, you can survey them to ask them what is a concern that you have, or what is one of your worries? And from there, you'll kind of see what sort of policies and procedures you may have to put in place that you might not have thought about. Or at the very least, if you already have those policies and procedures in place, you might be notified of a common trend or concern from your families that you need to address, whether that be like individually with that parent and how you handle your interactions with them, or like sending out a notice to all families about a certain specific topics. Definitely outline your new health and safety procedures with them. Provide answers to the parents even before they can think to ask you a question. If you have a website that you update frequently, which I suggest that you should update that website and put a special web page for COVID-19 updates. We call it our Essential Childcare page. You can also create digital newsletters to send out, and I just all around encourage honest and open communication with families at all times. So what are some programs and services that you could offer? What new business model possibly could you adopt? Because we all know that if we have to reduce our class sizes, how are we going to make up for the income that we're losing during this time? Think about distance learning or virtual classrooms in your preschools and in your childcare centers. At the start of this, we had 70% of our children leave our program, which we thought was temporarily at the time, and some are returning back this summer, some have already returned back, and some are not returning back for the foreseeable future. Either way, if you have kids staying home, they still need you. You can do this for free, but if you need to make up some of your revenue, you can consider charging for your virtual classroom experiences, or have a free version and a paid version and different levels of service that you offer virtually. If you don't know, I do have a podcast called Childcare Sights and Sounds, and it is all over my website, so you can access it there. And the latest episode, I talked to Monica J. Sutton, who is someone who provides virtual circle time experiences on YouTube every day to, I think she has over 80,000 kids that are watching her worldwide. So you can kind of look to see who's already doing it and how they're doing it, and see how you can adapt that to meet what you can offer your families. There's also changing classroom age groups to meet the demand. So if you're a program that has a lot of infants, a lot of toddlers, but you notice that those families do not really want to put their babies in your care at this time, don't feel stuck in that age group. Honestly, I'll share that when I first opened my childcare center, I thought that it would be, not that I didn't think about the fact that I could change the number of children that I serve for each age group. So my center is licensed for infants, toddlers, preschool, and school-age children ages 6 weeks old to 12 years old. When I set my classrooms up initially, I was shocked when my licensor I forgot how it came up, but she told me that I could change one of the classrooms to be an older age group. I think I had a question, I forgot what we discussed. And then I was like, oh wow, I didn't even think about that. So if you don't feel like serving infants is something that you should be doing right now, or there is just not a need for it, then don't serve infants. Talk to your licensor about how you can change the number of older age groups that you can serve. Maybe it's easy for you to make that switch. And I know that there are a lot of states that were providing like waivers to get around whatever sort of paperwork or rules that you would need usually in order to make these changes. So you can see if those waivers are applicable to you and if they're still in place. Speaking of demand, school age programs. I don't know what's happening with the school district in my program school district. I don't think they know what's happening yet. But I do know that it's going to look different. It has to. Our governor in New York has made it clear that school districts have to have a reopening plan as well, for the fall of 2020, and they're going to have to social distance in classrooms. I've heard things like A weeks, B weeks. I've heard things like shifts, some kids going in the morning and some kids going in the afternoon. I've heard things like schools are just going to continue virtual learning. Regardless, there is going to be a much higher demand for school age care. And how can you pick up those kids that are going to need childcare? Because while those kids might not have to physically go to school, if they're young enough, they're still going to need childcare because those parents still have to work, right? So what can you do about it? You can also consider offering different shifts of childcare for all age groups or as needed. So if you're a program that has extended hours, like mine is usually 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., maybe doing 6-hour program shifts for like a group A type of program and a group B type of program where some kids come in 6:30 to 12:30, some kids come in 12:30 to 6:30. That's not what we're doing, but if something like that works for you, again, create a plan, talk to your team about it, talk to your families about it. Maybe your families would be okay with that because they have someone that can watch their child, the first half of the day or the second half. You could also consider doing meal deliveries or pickups for meals. I'm not sure if the federal food program is still allowing waivers for this to happen, but I know back in March, I believe, they eliminated the need for children to actually be in your program to eat food for you to get reimbursed for those meals. If you guys are a part of the food program, you would be allowed to, I forgot the specific term that they use, but basically families can take the meal out of your program for that child to eat it at home or elsewhere, and you could still get paid for that meal that you served. That might be something you want to do. Or even if you're not affiliated with the food program, but you have a kitchen and you prepare food on site, maybe you can charge a small fee for making meals for kids who might need it. You can also consider partnering with your local or with other local organizations or schools to create sort of programs and services for young children. And of course, going back to the school age, there is going to be a lot of parents concerned about their children falling behind in learning because of this 3-month, really, by the time they go back to school in September, what will that be? Over 6 months of not being in school. And they have the right to be concerned. They should be concerned. That's a lot. Some children might need tutoring to catch up to all that they've fallen behind on. And of course, some kids will still have to participate in virtual learning and might struggle with that, or their parents don't have the time to sit with them and help them. Maybe you can offer some sort of virtual learning classroom where you set up computers and allow children to use your space for a fee to go to virtual school. These are all different creative strategies that you can think of. Also, the popular topic of how can we survive if we have to cut our groups in half, right? I don't know if, I don't believe that all states are allowing this, but ours is, and I know that there are many that are. You can add dividers into your larger rooms to create 2 small groups instead of 1 large one, or however many groups can fit according to your regulations that state the minimum square footage amount that you have to have per child. If your square footage is already large enough where you can fit multiple groups into that room, then do it. Definitely speak to your licensor first before making any plans or purchasing these expensive sort of dividers, because they are expensive. And think about what is going to be allowed. You want to try to get as much specifics from them. Some states are requiring that it be like 6 feet tall. Some states are like it has to be floor to ceiling. Some states don't have any guidance. So you want to consider that. There are different options. I've seen things as, friendly to the eye as just plexiglass walls, which are not like eyesores. And then there's things like this, the colorful dividers that you can roll out and roll back in. I've even seen in one of my local groups of childcare owners, someone installed a shower curtain rod in her program to put up a shower curtain. So get creative and check with licensing to see what is appropriate and allowed. Enrollment. If you're struggling with enrollment right now, or if your numbers are looking low for this summer or fall registration periods, here are a few ways that you can begin to attract new families to your program. One of the first actions that we took once our plans were developed was creating a COVID-19 page on our website, like I mentioned earlier, and uploading a virtual tour. Since we're not having visitors walk through our program, this is the only way that they can see it right now. And I know it makes parents feel a little more comfortable if they can see the program. Not only is the video a walkthrough of each room, but it shows an administrator discussing our policies, welcoming the viewer, and giving call to actions like give us a call now or register now. So it also shows examples of our arrival procedures and some health policies. If you can't do all of that, then fine, but create something. Something is better than nothing. And that video was filmed with an iPhone. You don't need a whole production team to put together quality content to post on your website or share on your social media. Film it with a phone. You could also offer discounts for essential workers to attract more families, which you can verify by asking them for employment documentation or ID. And you can create incentives for them to refer their coworkers who might also need childcare. And I'm not saying offer like heavy discounts that you can't afford, but if you offer anything, I'm sure they'll, even if it's something like, free registration. You can also offer a virtual learning program like we talked about, and you can make it open to all children within your community. You might be surprised to see that you'll get families registering that have never stepped foot in your program or talked to, or anybody or families that haven't even talked to you. That's something that happened with us. What do you think is going to happen in the future when those families need childcare? Why wouldn't they pick the program that's already been showing up for them every day online? Now is not the time to stop advertising either, but you should consider switching up your wording with the advertisements. Get those social media ads, get those Google ads. There's really no excuse not to use them. They are incredibly affordable because you can set it up according to your own budget. You can literally set up an advertisement and filter it to show to whoever you want based on their gender, their age, their location, their interest. and you can filter the time frame that you want the ad to show, whether it's just a couple of days or months. And you can set up how much you want to spend. You could spend as little as $20 and reach thousands of people in your community. You can also do things like collaborating with other organizations, creating a referral program amongst your current families or even your staff, and of course, creating special, unique offers. As you can see, there is so much there's so much to do and so much to go through with enrollment building specifically and different marketing strategies. And I would love to break some of these down for you in more detail and explain exactly how you can do them, which leads me to my upcoming workshop. I do have a workshop that I'll be providing next month on July 8th that will provide those that register with 5 simple marketing methods that can lead to quick enrollments. These are methods that I have used in my own program, so I know they work. I will show you examples of exactly what I did for my program, including my program's COVID-19 webpage, our virtual tour, our current advertisements, and things like that. I'm so excited for this workshop and all those to come in the future. I plan to host at least one workshop a month, so definitely stay tuned for more. And for clarity, my workshops are similar to webinars, but there are a few key differences. They're a little more interactive, kind of like a virtual classroom session, and you may be able to have your camera turned on and your microphone turned on during portions of the event. I'll also provide you with worksheets that you can download and fill in as a PDF prior to the start of the workshop so that you can use it before, during, or after as needed. And then, of course, there is a small fee. As you can see, this marketing workshop is $18. As of today, my free webinars are still set to continue. Don't worry, but rather than a webinar every week for the summertime and the foreseeable future, we'll have them every other week until further notice. And here and there, I'll also sprinkle in some workshops, hopefully once a month, as I mentioned, so that you guys can take a deeper dive into certain hot topics like this. I do want to note that unlike the webinars, the replay of workshops will not be sent out to everyone. You must show up live to view the workshop unless you are a member, which leads me to my special announcement that I promised to tell you guys about. Next week, Wednesday, on July 1st, I'm officially opening the Childcare Sites Network membership programs. Everyone subscribed to childcaresites.com will be notified as soon as they're able to sign up for membership. There will be 3 different levels of a monthly membership package that you could select from. The leadership group is for all those childcare business coaches, consultants, and influencers who need some sort of support in organizing their clients, booking calendars, and a bunch of other stuff, as you can see. But what I want to focus on for you guys that are listening to this webinar is the startup group and the support group, which are here, the second and third option. The startup group would be great if you are in the very beginning stages of planning your childcare business, whether it's going to be a home-based childcare program or a center in a commercial property. We'll have monthly live group conference calls with all the startup program members. If you need some fresh ideas from this community, discounts on workshops, and if you want exclusive access to member-only events and services, then this package is for you. Also, if you're a member of any of these groups, you will get access to the replay for all the workshops, including the upcoming marketing workshop. So there would be less pressure for you to watch live if you're a member, because the replay will be waiting for you in our members only area. And on top of that, there are huge discounts on workshops for members only. For my upcoming marketing workshop, if you register for that workshop after becoming a startup group member, you will get 75% off, bringing that workshop fee down to less than $5. And if you are a support group member, the workshop will be completely free. Again, if you register for the workshop after becoming a member. So please do not email me about, I already booked the workshop, I already registered for the workshop, but now I'm a member, can I get a refund? In my opinion, the support group provides the best value, and I believe that so much that I'm offering everyone a free 30-day trial for the month of July only. So anyone who signs up at any time in July will get a full 30 days free of accessing all the content within the members only areas. Within the support group, you'll have access to private videos, digital downloads, and private discussion forums to help you succeed in the business of childcare. I'll even give you monthly homework assignments so we can hold each other accountable for our action plans. And to give you guys some inside info, the name support group came about because honestly, owning a childcare business can feel really lonely at times. And I remember when I just started out and I didn't have anyone who could understand exactly what I was going through. There is no business like childcare. We are liable for people's most prized possessions, their kids, and while managing the stress of state regulations, employee issues, and our personal lives. It's a juggling act, and you might need some support. I'm kind of excited about the discussion forums in particular because you, as a member, will be able to post your own comments, your own videos. I even have it set up where you can post GIFs. It'll be so much fun. And you can get instant feedback from myself and other group members. From enrollment building to time management to employee leadership, hiring tips, there's just so much that goes on day to day, whether you're just starting out and want to know what to expect, or if you've been in the business for a while and just need some support and new ideas now and then, this would be the membership package for you. Again, on July 1st, everyone can select a membership package and you can start out with the support group membership for a free trial for a full 30-day cycle if you sign up anytime in July of this year. I am so excited about this, and I want to thank you all for making the Childcare Sites Network possible, whether you realize it or not. I hope this network becomes an additional added benefit to childcaresites.com, and I hope you enjoy. And to answer the question that is in the Q&A box, yes, this will help entrepreneurs who want to open a daycare business. Absolutely, that's what this is for. Speaking of the Q&A box, let's get back to the topic at hand. I do want to acknowledge that I received a lot of questions from up-and-coming childcare providers and program owners. I am so excited for you, and I cannot wait to see you succeed. But this webinar specifically is not for questions about qualifications or startup recommendations. I do have so many videos that you can watch for free on youtube.com/DaniChristine. You can also book a private consultation with me, and I also plan on hosting additional webinars and workshops surrounding these topics. And of course, you can join the membership. There's a lot of resources that I already provide for those types of questions, but for this Q&A, I do want to answer relevant questions to what I discussed earlier on in this webinar. So please don't think I'm ignoring your question if it doesn't get answered. It just probably wasn't applicable to this webinar topic. All right, so who has a question? please put it in the Q&A box. There were a few that were sent in along with registration, so I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to put your questions in the Q&A box as I look for those that were already sent in. We have a little over 10 minutes left. If nobody has a question, we can definitely end early, but I'd rather give you guys the time to ask whatever you might need to ask. Okay. I just opened the registration forms. Someone, Jackie, wanted to know, how did you overcome negativity with employees, how to get employees to be team players, how to handle or deal with parents who don't want to do their part as parents and work with teachers. So let me answer that question. Sophia, but before I get into that, Sophia, the topic of today's webinar was surviving and thriving in the childcare business beyond COVID-19. So basically everything that I talked about earlier on in this webinar. This webinar was not about opening a center, it's about surviving if you already kind of have one. Or if you were in the process of opening one and now have to reimagine your plans because of COVID-19. But to go back to Jackie's question that she had upon registering, how did you overcome negativity with employees? Going back to communication, I just really didn't dwell in the negativity. The negativity didn't exist as much, at least in front of me, because I placed myself in the program with my employees when we found out about what was going on and the state closing down K-12 schools, and we talked about all the things we were concerned about, and we were just open and honest with them. How to get employees to be team players. We also gave them options that if they didn't want to be team players during this time, because it was just a scary time to be alive, honestly, worrying about your health and safety, your family's health and safety. We understood that. And in the beginning, we gave them the option that if they didn't want to work at this time, that we would offer them a voluntary layoff. That is something that we were able to do then. I understand if not all employers are able to do that, if you can't do that in your programs, that's understandable if you need the staff. But if you can afford to let some go, which most of us probably can, then offer them that option. I did it again, but I first did it back in March, and I did it again now as we are heading into summer. I asked our staff if they would like to be voluntarily laid off, and some responded yes. So asking that question, if they're not willing to be on your team, maybe letting them go might be the best option at this time. And if you do have a good relationship with them, and if you know they're a valuable team player in normal circumstances, try to keep that door open if possible. And then how to handle or deal with parents who don't want to do their part as parents and work with the teachers. That is always a struggle, isn't it? With our normal policies and procedures, right? It is important to stick to the policies that you have documented. Many states will say that you will be out of compliance to not stick with the policies that you have written down and sent into them. Your policies could be subject to change, but that would need to be documented and shared before you change them. So it's important not to make exceptions just because a parent is giving you a hard time. It'll mess with your credibility. So if parents don't want to do their part, I'm assuming she means like if they need to monitor their children's safety, health at home, or possibly their procedures. If they're not following your procedures and policies, then they can't be a parent that has a child enrolled in your program. You would have to warn them that they are going to risk their child's place in your program if they continue to disregard your rules. The next question, Norma wanted to know, how can we survive reopening with half or less than half of the kids we had before the pandemic? This is very stressful. It is very stressful. That's my immediate response to your question, Norma. I want to kind of refer back to what I mentioned earlier about kind of just reimagining the programs and services that you offer. You might be able to provide different resources that could be either paid products or paid services or paid meals or just different shifts of childcare. You have to figure out how you can remodel your business as needed, or possibly, if your state allows it, adding those dividers so that you can separate one large group or a couple large groups into smaller group sizes of 10 or less, as your state has, whatever your state says is the mandated number. And even if it's not mandated, I know that there are some states who don't have mandated lower numbers. To set yourself apart from other programs who are near you, who might just be filling up their classrooms because the competition has been eliminated and there's a whole bunch of kids, so I'm going to take them in, right? I don't suggest that you do that, especially if you can afford not to. Even if your state doesn't have mandatory guidance for lowering your group sizes, you could market yourself as you are taking best practice methods, even if it's not mandatory. And if this goes on for much longer than you can afford, you can raise your tuition rates. You should be raising your rates anyway as time goes by, usually annually, but this is an emergency need to raise your rates, and you can inform your families in advance if you're going to, let's say, do it for the fall rather than January, or whenever you typically raise your rates. If you need to do it sooner rather than later, just send out a notice as soon as possible after meeting with your financial team or your accountant or whoever helps you develop your budgets. Take their projections into consideration and raise your rates as needed. It is a business. You can also see what sort of state programs or grants or free childcare offers that they're offering. New York State has been providing free childcare for all essential workers, which means that our Childcare Resource and Referral Agency has been registering families, or not registering them, but connecting families to programs, families that need childcare, to programs that are open, and our Childcare Resource and Referral Agency is paying us the tuition fee on a weekly basis rather than parents paying us a tuition fee. Does your state have something like that? Or does your county or your local area have something like that? That's something that you can consider. Let me see. I'll take one more question before I go. Someone wants to know, Irene wants to know, will we get contact hours for the workshops? Yes, you will. The workshop that is coming up on July 8th is on Wednesday, July 8th from 6 p.m. Eastern to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. I don't know what time the others coming in the future will be, but you will be notified in advance. So just keep looking out for my emails. I hope they're not too annoying. Again, I have a lot of questions about starting a program, and Sophia kind of just gave me an idea about why that might be. She says that I received a worksheet for opening a center, and that did happen. A lot of people that registered, that recently subscribed to my website or registered for this webinar, I think, was accidentally sent a digital download of a worksheet that I created to go along with one of my recent YouTube videos. If you don't know, I do post videos on YouTube multiple times a week, and there was a glitch in my website that sent out worksheets to people that submitted a form. So if you got that worksheet and are like, what is this? It's because I made a mistake. So yeah, that's why that happened. And other than that, I think that this webinar provided you with some information, some strategies that you could use as you begin to reopen. Next week, we will have Scott Wayman from Kangaroo Time hosting our free webinar. It's on July 1st from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Same time, same place as all the rest of the webinars we've been hosting for the past 2 months. So register for that if you have not already done so. childcaresites.com/webinars is the place that you would go to register for that. If you have been enjoying these webinars and all the other content that is provided to you on childcaresites.com, I would urge you to please share your feedback, review this webinar, and by going to childcaresites.com/feedback. I want to hear from you on what's working, what you love, and how we can be better, honestly. And again, the workshop will follow the week after Scott's webinar. So July 8th, the workshop is $18. It's 5 simple marketing methods that will lead to quick enrollments. So go to childcaresites.com/workshops to register for that. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will be sharing the replay, the recorded replay of this webinar tomorrow. So check your emails for that, and I will see you soon. Hopefully same time, same place next week. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your week.